everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Movies Are Dead. All right, we're doing another audio only because the vaccine and the immunity period and yada, 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 this and that. All right. So, but nevertheless, we're going to continue this. Okay. It's going to be good. All right. This week we are doing, what are we doing, Boris? Which movie is it?
We're doing John Cassavetes' Faces, 1968.
1968. That's right, man. Yep. So,
It's,
buddy,
yes.
tell me, what'd you think?
I think this is John Cassavetes' fourth movie, but in reality, it seems like his second movie, right?
I agree.
After Shadows, he made a couple of studio movies where he didn't have full control, and he obviously those didn't come out as well. First off, I guess I love this movie, but it's a difficult movie to love. I think for most people who watch this, it wouldn't be the best first Cassavetes to go in with, because I think it's pure, right? It doesn't hold back.
No, you're right. Yeah. No, yeah. The two films you're talking about is Too Late Blues and A Child Is Waiting.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And yeah, it feels like it picks up right where Shadows left off. You know, black and white, grainy, cinema verite, as they call it. Yeah, I think this is it's not a good entry point for Cassavetes. I think Shadows would be pretty good. You know,
Shadows, killing up a Chinese bookie.
Yeah, killing a Chinese bookie. Yeah,
fucking easiest.
Ben Gazzara.
Gazzara.
Yeah. So, no, yeah, this movie, it's kind of hard to get through on first watch. You know, I've seen this movie a couple times, and each time I always discover something new. You know, kind of like 8.5. This time around is theater. It's almost like you're watching a play. You know.
Yeah, it's very much like a play. I think he started writing it out as a 2-act play. One act was going to be all the men's stuff, and all the second act was going to be all the women's stuff. The way that's split up in the film, also, you're quite right that it's very it's not stagey for sure, but it is very controlled. It's controlled chaos, I think, in how it's staged and shot.
It is controlled chaos.
The way he shot movies, or the way he shot this movie, is that he would just light the room and let the actors find where they wanted to go. And that would change from take to take, obviously. Sometimes they felt they would stand over here and say this line. Sometimes they would sit on the couch and say that line. But it would always be, and you can tell in the editing, it sort of feels like it's piecing, obviously, different takes together, but it's like piecing different rhythms together and like all in the same scene.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of moments where I was like, man, the editing of this must have been a real challenge to put it together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For it to flow. But I mean, it flows, but in this crazy chaotic way. Like I'm thinking of that scene on the couch with Gina Rowlands, John Marley, and the two corporate dudes, right?
Yeah.
And the other lady of the night. I think of that scene a lot, and how like the close-ups and how we go around the characters and the close-ups of John Marley's face, him talking. And then in that moment, you could kind of feel like the room, like the essence of the room, like the tension.
Yeah.
Right. The sweat on the actors' faces. It's a very sweaty movie. Did you notice that?
It's very textural.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
He has a great way of making you feel like you're in that space with those characters, and every movie he does. And I think a lot of that is just that he lets scenes start in places they wouldn't usually start, where they don't tell you should start scenes or end them, and they go on for much longer than you think a scene should go on for. But that just serves to put you in that place with those characters. Sort of like a fly on the wall, like you're just intruding on that moment that's very personal and vulnerable for them, and you're just sort of spying on them from vantage point.
Yeah, you mentioned vulnerable. I feel like all of the characters are vulnerable at one point in the movie, specifically Gina Rowlands. I think her character the most. Like it just feels the way he shoots scenes with women in them. I just like how he, like the direction each scene goes in, like specifically John Marley's wife in the beginning, where she serves him like food and they're talking about like another couple, about Freddie and his marriage.
Right.
Um, Fred, there you go, Fred. And his wife is played by Lynn Carlin. Man, that
Right.
performance, jeez. I mean,
Yeah,
she's
and
good though.
this whole story behind that is that she hadn't acted before. She was a secretary for
Uh,
Robert Altman,
really?
and they worked in the same office space. Cassavetes did, and with Robert Altman. Except Cassavetes would just he was in charge of developing ideas for TV shows.
John Marley, his character's name is Richard, until he says like, I want a divorce
Mhm.
in that scene at the bar area in their house. And then from there, it's just like silence. Like Cassavetes just uses like silence. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
just, and it's just so still. And like the way he films Lynn Carlin's reaction, she laughs at first, and then he's like, "No, I'm serious," and like, and then it's sort of just there. It lays there, and they sit in it, and they're like, "Well, like, Cassavetes moves on to another scene where it's like a flashback,
Hmm.
and like, John Marley, he thinks about like this past moment of them. Like, I guess it's them after they have sex, and he's joking with her.
Right.
He's joking with her about he's saying those like classic setup punchline jokes, and the way it sits there. And I don't know, I think Cassavetes really understands like the difficulties of any like serious relationship, and like what it can do to the human spirit over time,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Well, if you think of
so sad.
Shadows as very much a young person's movie or a movie about youth, this is more
Yeah,
about middle age, comfortable. You have a house, you have money, you can feed yourself. You should be happy. You should be content with what you have. But this sort of
yeah,
lifestyle where you have kids and you have a job and you're married and you have the house and the cars and the garage, it doesn't lead to anywhere that's very fulfilling for them. It just leads to more depression.
yeah, it's like almost like the lead up to obtaining that life is more, how would you
Hmm.
say, it's the drive that's more entertaining than actually getting what you want, because once you get what you want, then it could lead to complacency, and you're sort of just drifting, right?
Yeah, because your whole life you're told these things are the things you need to do to be fulfilled and happy. These are the things you need to be to be like a complete human being, and you do those things, and you wind up feeling depressed and empty, frustrated, and this is for both men and
Yeah,
women, obviously. And this movie covers both aspects, but this is something that he thought Cassavetes that would lead to the end of this country. That this sort of alienation and emptiness would just lead to a point where people just won't be able to go on anymore.
yeah, I think Cassavetes captures that, and the movie also captures like this weird point in American history where people are actually thinking about like the ideas of marriage, the
Hmm.
ideas of relationships, why they're in them, the middle class lifestyle, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's
I
very
think
much
this sort of like, yeah,
an
yeah, this is
exploration of
like
the
a
middle
fu for
class.
that, a dissection. It's a very well timed movie. I think it's just like it fits in that era,
Definitely.
68.
Yeah, and I,
And
I bet it still feels relevant. I mean, it doesn't feel like it was
yeah,
made in '68. It still feels new. It feels like
it
it's,
does. Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't have the rhythms or the look or the feel of a movie that was made during that time period. It has more
right.
of a, yeah, that's obviously because Cassavetes making a movie on his own, free from any studios or interference from executives, can make something that isn't as factory made and processed as other people
Yeah,
are making movies during that time period.
yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think about like the other contemporary studio movies at the time that were about romantic relationships or just relationships, and I'm thinking of like what, like Barefoot in the Park with Robert Redford, right, and Jane Fonda, or like,
Yeah, and
uh,
also maybe Antonioni was going over the
yeah,
same things during this time.
yeah, or Mike Nichols, right? I mean, Cardinal Knowledge, right? That's
Yeah, that was
another
like
one.
a few years later, but yeah, it's
Yeah, it's another one. Or like, The Graduate, even the year before, 67,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It was sort of a new approach to how we saw relationships on screen.
Yeah,
Before we weren't so movies weren't so candid about how
yeah,
often these kinds of relationships led to frustration and discontent.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I wish Cassavetes was in this movie. He should have been in this movie.
Yeah, I don't think there was really a part for him though.
Oh, he could have played John Marley's character, I think.
Well, I really like John Marley though. He has the face for it.
He does, yeah. He does have
Yeah,
this like,
yeah.
oh God.
Just like a lot of life. Like he's like aged prematurely. It seems like it
It
just
does.
seems like he's a lot older than he actually is.
Yeah, and he says like 48 years old. He says his age. He said I'm
Mm.
40. And it's just like, dude, you look like you're pushing 60, dude.
Yeah, he's like 65 or something. I don't know.
yeah. The script too. The way that it flows back and forth. I know that most of the movie's improv because it's Cassavetes, but it feels like it's so poppy and it's just
Mhm.
one thing after another. And you start thinking about like what's the point of, like relationships? What's the point of being in something if you don't want to be in it? And also obtaining a love that you think will save you, but it's not, you know?
Right. It's just you can see this through all of his movies, but there's a steady, like every character has a habit. They smoke or drink, or they go to prostitutes, and they
Yeah.
all have this kind of thing that they lean on because they
Yeah.
can't take their lives straight, right? They can't just live and be content with that. They have to like numb themselves or distract themselves in some way because in their regular life, whatever that is, or can be defined by they're not nothing they have, whether it's their kids or their house or their job makes them happy. They have to always find some happiness in husbands and a trip to London and drinking and cheating on their wives. Um,
Yeah.
even for I just saw opening night again after a long time, and even for Gina
Yeah.
Rollins' character in that movie, she
And she goes
yeah
deep in that role, man.
she's permanently discontent with what she's doing, with where she's at in her life, and it just leads to all kinds of tragedy. And but looking at the movies that came out the same year as Faces, the number one
Okay, go.
grossing movie was Funny Girl. I don't know if you've seen
Funny
Funny.
girl. Okay.
Yeah, William Wyler, Streisand, right? Barbara Streisand. Yeah. Beyond that, you have 2001: A Space Odyssey. You have The Odd Couple. You have Bullet, Rosemary's Baby. You can see the difference between something like Faces
Yeah.
and something like
Yeah.
Oliver or
It was starting. It was
Funny
starting.
Girl.
Yeah. The dismantling of the studio system was starting at the time.
Yeah, that was like when New Hollywood started to take over the following year after
Yeah.
Bonnie and Clyde. All these new kinds of movies started coming out, and
Yeah.
it's too bad. For some reason, I never really hear John Cassavetes being mentioned alongside Scorsese or De Palma or Spielberg.
Yeah. I can see why though.
Yeah, it's a lot. He didn't really work with studios. It was always on his own, right? Always funding his own
Yeah.
movies. He never really wanted to be part of a movement that wasn't his own, right?
Yeah. There's three big sequences in the movie
Mm-hmm.
that sort of like drive the movie. And he does that shot from above on the roof as they enter the house. Love that
Mm-hmm.
shot.
Yeah,
There's also the club with her girlfriends, and
yeah.
we're introduced to Seymour Castle, and then
Chat.
of course the OD scene.
Mm-hmm.
OD scene.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, Seymour Castle, an amazing performance in that scene.
Who's who's the actress who plays the woman he's dancing with the night before? It's Florence, right? That's Florence, and that's Dorothy Gulliver. And there's this great part of that scene where Seymour Cassell and Dorothy Gulliver playing Florence are dancing
Yeah,
together, and she's
yeah.
obviously. It can see. I mean, it seems like she's like almost falling completely in love with him. And
They're dancing to the blues, right? To the blues. He
yeah,
puts on the blues to start dancing. Yeah.
and she is all about him, and he's just he's not so much about her. He just likes the attention, right? He just likes.
Yeah, he has a great line sitting in the chair and they're all around him and they're scared of him. They're
Uh,
afraid of him almost. And he's all like, if a girl just wants to lay down, all right, man, I'll jump in or something. And it's just like he embodies that, the upcoming the 60s spirit, the late 60s spirit that was gonna be take over and reinvent culture,
Yeah.
and like his characters, it's probably my favorite character, I would say, out
In
of
the
all the
movie.
male characters. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's my favorite. Just because, like, I like the way they tell him, like, our husbands are scared of you guys, the upcoming
Hmm.
generation. And I like the way he's just like, no one should be scared of us or something. And
It's both those scenes, the scenes at Jeannie Rapp's place and the scene at their house. It's sort of like a bizarre mating ritual.
yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, for like for when like John Marley's at Gene Rhodes' house and there's like the other two guys there, the businessmen, forget what they did,
Yeah,
insurance salesman or something. And at first they start
yeah.
fighting, like they're actually like grappling with each other. And it's not like any punch or throw, but they're just like sort of grabbing at one another.
Those guys were like 60 years ahead of the time because that's how people fight now. It's all
Yeah,
grappling.
yeah. They're
You
just
don't
like
see
grabbing each other.
jujitsu shit. And then the dude, Cassavetes cuts away to what John Marley's character does. You don't
Hmm.
see him hurt the other guy. All you hear the other guy say is, "Oh, my leg, my leg, my
Hmm.
leg," and then
Hmm.
like you pan back. You know, I can see like Wes Anderson doing something like that.
Yeah.
Pan away, and then you hear it and come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sort of leaving it off screen when you wonder
Yeah,
what happened.
yeah. That scene, and yeah, you're right. Those scenes are so like it's like two opposites of a coin or something, but it's going in the same direction. I don't know how to describe it. You know what
No,
I mean?
yeah, that's very much what he was trying to do with this
Yeah.
movie, just sort of compare and contrast and see how women or how men behave in
Yeah.
this kind of situation. And it makes us as human beings look weird and just we like to think we're like high minded and sophisticated, but we're really not when it comes down to it, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty
No, you're right.
we're pretty basic in terms of like how compare us to like
Yeah.
lions or bears or something. It just we're the
Oh,
same.
yeah. Yeah. It all boils down to the same thing, how everybody in a given situation, if they're romantically attracted
Hmm.
to somebody, they want, sex out of them. You know what I mean? And it could go both ways.
Right. It definitely does go
Um,
both ways. Talking about yeah, we said there was like 7 or 8 sequences in this movie, and
yeah.
the way each sequence unfolds is that they last what like 15 minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes each.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
long and they don't have the structure they have is invisible. You can't really compare it to something else that you've seen before.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Starts in a
It
weird
doesn't work.
place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes through all these different dynamics and emotions. It's unpredictable is what it is. You don't really know where it's going. It winds up at a place where you just sort of feel tired, but also like sort of exhilarated that you're seeing this because it approximates real life in a way that other movies usually don't.
No, you're right. I think it's almost identical to real life because that's how real life kind of works. It doesn't
Hmm.
like real life like in a given day. It's not like doesn't work like a movie. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
doesn't work like and then this happened, and then this happened. It's sort of just
exactly.
drift.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm thinking of that conversation that business guy has with Gina Rollins' character, Jeannie, and he's like he brings up his son and
Hmm.
he says like he's in college. He wears tennis shoes all day. Tennis shoes. Can you believe that?
Hmm.
And then he pretends to have sex with her to impress the other guy, and it just plays out in this bizarre way, and then it works. It comes like full circle with John Marley appearing in the scene, and then it just becomes like this jealousy thing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And arguments. You feel exhausted. I felt exhausted after every scene emotionally. Like I felt like I was in there and felt like I was like watching these people and like being consumed by their energy. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. It just most screenwriters are taught to write scenes in a way that it's usually very predictable if you watch any other movie, in that you have a conflict, something gets in the way of what the protagonist wants. It usually takes place. It usually like has like 3 beats: beginning, middle, and end. And
Yeah.
the scenes in Faces or any other one of his movies is more of it's hard to describe. I mean, I don't want to say like the cliche thing and say it's like jazz because that wouldn't be accurate, but it's much more freeform because it's more willing to be. It's more willing to get lost in a place that isn't necessarily immediately rewarding, but it all pays off in the end. It all builds. It's like a big roller coaster, essentially.
It is like a roller coaster, or it reminds me of that spinny thing
Yeah.
where you line up against the wall and it spins.
Yeah.
That thing, 400 blows, he goes in there,
Right. Yeah. It sort
he's
of
on the wall and shit.
builds up, and you go down the big drop, and you build
Yeah,
up again and again and
yeah,
again. And just yeah, it winds up
and
being
again.
sort of chaotic, but also
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah. I just like that scene with Seymour Castle and the ladies and they're dancing and,
Yeah.
and I don't know, the shame those ladies had around, like, what they were feeling is so like, the way it's directed, and you could feel it in the air, and I feel bad for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people get to that place, but we keep it inside for the most part. Like even with our friends, we keep that sort of stuff inside, or sort of like discontent and disillusion with the way our lives are going.
Yeah,
I mean, even for us, we're not that old, but like at their age, I can imagine what it's like to like look in the mirror and see that you're almost 50 and you never really got anything you wanted, or what you thought you wanted to get, you got it, but it
oh,
wasn't as fulfilling as you thought it would be. It just sort of
yeah,
leaves you cold.
yeah, like John Marley's character, man, like, I don't know, like, I even when like, in that flashback scene with his wife, when they're in the bed, even when he's, like, joking and everything, he's, like, laughing with her. After one of the final jokes, she says, "Well, that one's not," I mean, he goes, "I'm really funny, ha, ha, ha," and she's like, "Well, you're kinda funny."
Hmm.
And then there's this, like, weird silence, and he kinda gets his feelings hurt, and
Yeah,
then
definitely.
they lay there, and then, like, they, like, flip on their sides, and they look in opposite directions, and then that's it.
Yeah, it's I
And
guess
maybe
for
that
so
was the
many
moment
people.
he realized, yeah, then maybe that was the moment he realized, like, "Damn, man, I think I might be getting a divorce, this isn't what I want anymore,"
Yeah.
you know? And, like, the camera work too, like, how it's so jumpy and it's so chaotic at times, but
Hmm.
then he also has these shots of, like, pure stillness,
Hmm.
particularly the Seymour Castle scene with the ladies, and also the scene where, Richard, John Marley's character, he is on the phone and his wife is watching him call Gina Rowland's character to meet him at a bar.
Hmm.
Those are the only few steady shots in the movie. Everything else is pretty, like, all over the place, handheld, you don't
Right.
know, 16 millimeter and craziness, but the way he
Yeah.
holds shots though, and when he means it, you could feel like the tension and like the buildup. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. The camera never really stops moving, which
Yeah.
is it's a contrast to the way he would later make movies. At least for opening night, I noticed that the camera is mostly not still, but it's not handheld. It's not shaking all the time, or not even shaking. It's not always moving. It's content to like leave the camera in one place and just
Yeah.
cut between the characters. And for this, it reminded me a lot of sort of the editing that they do in the Danish New Wave with like Binterberg and Von Trier, like in Breaking the Waves or
Yeah. Yeah.
Celebration, where it's all handheld and the cuts, a lot of jump cuts, really sort of freeform editing that doesn't necessarily follow a moment to moment, but just like it
Yeah.
feels free to jump around,
Yeah.
not be sort of limited to something.
And the '60s looked like it was a pretty crazy time to live in, especially in
Yeah.
LA. It looks like it was. I like the way everything's filmed and captured. Was that Cassavetes' house?
The one, yeah, Richard and Jeannie's house is the Cassavetes house, and the other house was Gina Rowlands' mom's house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
And
that's how they shot there because yeah, they didn't have any money.
yeah,
Most people on this movie worked for free or for a couple
yeah,
of points on whatever profits there would be later, but they just did it as Cassavetes says in an interview
yeah,
that they did it for the love of making something
yeah.
because
That's
they
kind of
wanted to
like
make
Seymour.
something.
Yeah, I know Seymour Castle worked on Faces
Yeah.
for free. He was like a runner or something, and that's how he got in with Cassavetes. And
Yeah, like they were friends, and he was just like working with the shooting before his scene started. to shoot because they shot it mostly in order, I think,
Oh, okay.
in the way the movie takes place. So yeah, yeah, it was a complete collaboration between him and a few people. Like the crew must have been like what 10 people at most during most days.
Yeah, probably.
Like a really small crew, and it was mostly people who just wanted to work to make something that was different and much more free and liberating than working on a studio production. Yeah, it's
With
crazy.
that no, with that being said, I mean, like, movies of that era, like, it felt like you could just pick up the camera, shoot for, like, a couple weeks, and then bam, you'd have a movie, you know?
Yeah, it makes me feel bad now because we have much
I
easier access
know.
to
Oh,
equipment,
yeah. I
but
know.
somehow we're not really making anything. We're just sort of waiting for something. I don't know, and it's like it's a good example because they didn't wait. Cassavetes didn't wait to like have the right amount of money or the right actors or locations. He just did what he could with what he had, and what
Yeah.
came out of it was something that was different. Because you also have to like, he also had a philosophy that was unique to the way he saw the world and the way he saw people living. And he's never really making fun of these characters or being sort of like casting himself at a distance from where they are. He's very empathetic to their situation and the way they react and the way they live. So you can see a lot of other people would make this kind of movie and sort of like take a step back and be like they're writing some sort of essay about the
That's
modern
yeah.
state, about American marriage or whatever, the middle class. But he's right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It could have easily become, like, Revolutionary Road or something. Like a
Right.
movie like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know, yeah, but Cassavetes, man, he's up there, he's probably one of my favorites,
Yeah, mine
you
too.
know?
But yeah, what I want to talk about is that there's a disconnect between the independent movies that he would make and the movies that are so-called independent now that aren't made with the filmmakers' own money or the money they get from their family. They're mostly made from they're made of money from like millionaires, studios, small studios, but still studios.
Yeah, it's a
And
spin-off of the big studio.
yeah, but yes, it's just like you can tell that those movies are made from a place of I don't know if it's a greater comfort or safety or security because these movies
Um,
also wind up being not as daring or willing to shake things up as faces or
yeah,
shadows does. Because I mean, like, look at anything that comes out of Sundance or South by Southwest. Most of those movies, no one remembers them by
I
December.
don't remember, I don't know any. I don't
Yeah, and they're
yeah,
the so-called independent movies they make now. They just seem safe. They want to be liked. They're desperate to be liked, and this movie doesn't care if you like it.
no, it doesn't, like yeah, like we said, it's kinda hard to get through on the first go around, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so different from what we're used
It's
to.
pretty different, yeah.
And it's not willing to sort of take you by the hand and
Yeah,
you in. It just starts
I'm looking up here, the NY Critics pick of the best movies
for that year or this year.
for this year. No,
Uh,
from 1968.
uh.
Yeah, The Lion and Winter.
Isn't it also crazy that like all the critics associations always pick like the same 10 movies together? There's like no dissent or curiosity to like pick something that's not as seen or a bit weirder or more unexpected. It's always like the same 10 movies every single year that everyone agrees on.
It is pretty strange. Every now and then you get one that's thrown in there though, that's like
Yeah, like every once in a while, but there seems to be like this sort of standard of quality that if your movie is a bit different from what they're used to, they don't get included. They're not the 10 best movies of the year or something. It's just something.
ah,
There's like a sort of like an aesthetic prestige sort of model you have to follow, and if you don't follow that model, your movie doesn't get talked about or seen even.
yeah, like distribution. And it has
Yeah,
to
that's part of
hit
it.
these things and yeah, I'm looking at some of them right here. Yeah, Oliver, 2001 Space Odyssey, Raquel, The Seagull, The Fixer, and
Uh-huh.
Secret Ceremony. Sounds like a snooze fest.
Maybe.
Except for Space Odyssey. The rest were
I mean, yeah, there's it happens all the time that there's whatever these are the 5 best movies of the year, and then you don't remember those movies in 10 years
yeah, I know.
from when you
Well,
said
let's see.
that.
Hold on, wait. Five best movies. I think I could name some from 10 years ago. I could
Sure,
name.
but like what I'm saying is like what the Oscars are saying or what the National Board of Review are saying. Is that the kind of movie that still comes
Yeah.
remembered later? I mean,
Yeah.
I think yeah, we could both remember movies from 10 years ago that are great,
Yeah.
but I don't think they necessarily line up with what all the critics and all the people at
Yeah.
the
I'm sure.
Oscars
Yeah. I'm sure there's some
are
pressure.
saying.
There's some pressure to pick specific ones, you know?
Well, it's like it sort of feels like you want to be in the conversation if you're talking about a movie that people don't like or haven't seen. It just feels like you're left out almost. It feels like there always has to be like this consensus that this is the best movie of the
Yeah.
year.
Kind of like Nomadland this year.
Yeah, or yeah, definitely. Or this is like the best performance or the best score. But if you think that some weird Polish movie that's like 3 hours long.
Shout out to Cold War. I love that movie.
Yeah, and also that's it wasn't ignored critically, to
No,
be
it wasn't.
sure. But there's movies that they might be genre movies, it might be a horror movie that does something new with the form and has something to say. But because it's a horror movie, it's not going to get included in the list of 10 best movies,
Yeah.
even though it might be a movie that people wind up remembering 50 years from when it was released. There's like a real danger of this kind of stuff where if you don't get included in this list or on that list, or if you don't have the right amount of marketing or the amount of money to spend on it, you just get forgotten and
It'll
ignored.
get lost. Yeah. So sad.
So
There's
yeah,
a lot of movies
Faces.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Faces got 3 Oscar nominations that year, which is crazy to me.
That is kind of crazy. All right. So that's another edition of Movies Are
Are
Dead.
dead.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning
Bye.
in. See ya.